Hello there, I'm Diann Davisson, your Certified Grief Recovery Specialist. And today I'm going to demonstrate to you how to do your relationship graph. Last week when we were together, we did our lost history graph. And so what we're going to do is we're going to select one of the people on our lost history graph, and that's going to create our relationship graph. Now, you're going to find out a little bit later on, and I'm going to help you choose who to work on, and the person you may choose may not even be on this lost history graph that you did. But we're going to talk about that a little bit later. So on our relationship graph, I decided to choose to work on my identical twin sister. And what you can see that's different from this graph than our other graph is that we have lines going upward and we have lines going downward. And so what we're going to do, same idea as our lost history graph, we're going to do a line all the way across, as you can see here that I did on mine. And then the items on the upper line, the lines going up, will denote all of those wonderful memories that you had with that relationship. The positive, the sweet, the fun, the loving memories that you had, the happy ones. Then the lines that go downward will show us the ones that were negative or sad or sour or filled with grief. We're going to start with the same idea. We're going to start with our date of conscious memory, and then we're going to end with today's date. Now on your relationship graph, your date of conscious memory is the date, the memory that you had with that relationship. Maybe it was the first time that you remember your mom and your dad coming to one of your games. Maybe it was the first time your tooth fell out and the tooth fairy came. It could be your first birthday. If you can't remember that first date of conscious memory with your relationship, go ahead and use the one from your lost history graph. This date of conscious memory could be positive or it could be negative. Maybe the first birthday that you had, something like that. So on my graph that I'm doing with my identical twin sister, the first date of my conscious memory is we were about 3 or 4 years old. We were identical twins. We had strawberry blonde hair. My mother dressed up identically, and so she would enter us into these twin beauty pageants. And I can remember being so proud and feeling so cute and getting all of this attention with my sister and myself. Then the next memory that I had that was a positive, a fun memory, was probably when we were about 6 or 7 years old. And Darla and I, that's the name of my sister, we went on TV shows. We went on Chuckle the Clown, Engineer Bill, and Bozo the Clown. And that was so much fun to go up to Hollywood and be on TV and then coming home and seeing us on the TV and getting pictures. The next memory I had was probably about 1960s, and that was many birthday parties. My mom gave us the best birthday parties. They were always based on a theme. She sent out beautiful invitations, decorated. We had a pirate theme. We had a luau theme. And I can remember Darla and I getting all these presents and everybody coming over, and it was really, really a wonderful memory to share that with my sister. And then the next memory I had is I was probably about 11 or 12 years old, and my sister went to the little local 5 and 10 cent store at the corner, and she stole a necklace, and she came back and told me. And what I did is I went and tattletaled on her. And at the time, I didn't feel bad. I thought that was the right thing to do. She did something wrong. However, in hindsight, as I matured, I felt horrible about being a tattleteller. And especially because as I grew up, when I was about 15 and a half or 16 years old and 17, still living at home, I was gay. And my sister never tattletaled on me. She always teased me, but she never, told my parents. So I felt really, really bad about being a tattletale. And then as a couple of years later, as we got a little older, I can remember Darla and I fighting like cats and dogs. There was no peace in our house. We just fought, one thing after another. And as you can see, I have a line that continues down because we had many fights. So I don't need to list every single fight, but there was conflict in our relationship. And my next memory I had is I was probably about 12 or 13, and we moved from Long Beach, California to Placentia, California, where they were cutting down all the orange groves and building brand new houses, and I got my own bedroom. I did not have to share my bedroom with my sister. I felt so independent. I felt, wow, this is my life, and I could really be who I was. I just loved it. And then I started getting my own friends. It was just a wonderful time, a wonderful memory. She had her own room, and that was a real good memory. And then probably when I was a high school senior, I'm thinking, my aunt and uncle had this cabin up in Big Bear, up in the mountains. And I can remember one evening, it was about 9:30 or 10, late at night. You know, when you're young, you go out all night. And Darla and I decided to drive up to Big Bear because my parents were up there in the cabin and surprise them. And so we left at 9:30 or 10 at night. It was foggy. I remember driving her car, and I had to open up the car door just to see the line on the road so I could figure out where we're going. When we got up to Big Bear, it's probably about midnight, there was a 24-hour diner. We went in there and had a late dinner, and it was just really wonderful. We just connected like that. Just really enjoyed ourselves. And then a memory that was not good, I had then graduated from high school. I had my own apartment, and Darla and I were identical twins. When Darla was completely showered, so to speak, she wore makeup, false eyelashes, false hair. She dressed like she was going out on the town every single night. So she comes over to the apartment building, talks to the manager, tells the manager that she was Diann and that she had locked herself out of the apartment, and if the manager would let her in. And so the manager, of course, did. She goes in, takes my shoes, takes my clothes. I couldn't believe it. When I got back to my apartment and found this out, I was beyond upset and angry at her. I remember calling my brother, calling my mother, and they just thought that was so funny because that's how Darla was. She was a clown. In fact, she got kicked out of both of our high schools in our district and went to continuation school. But once again, I was like the butt of her jokes. One thing I didn't put on here, and I just dropped in, was a memory when we were younger. The kids on our neighborhood called us the sisters. They couldn't distinguish who was Diann and who was Darla. And a really good memory was that we always had each other backs. If somebody said, Darla did this to me, I would always say, we would never rat each other out. And then in 1971, my sister, who's in continuation school, 17, I believe, years old, gets pregnant. Now I have line going downward and upward. The downward one was you don't get pregnant when you're 17 and not married and living at home. That just, in my view, just did not seem right. I was embarrassed. I was angry at her. And yet my upward line was there's a beautiful baby that's coming into the world, and bless his soul, and his name was Rusty. My sister and the boyfriend ended up getting married. It lasted about 9 months. And then my next entry was 2 or 3 years after Rusty was born. She had left her first husband. They had divorced. And any time Darla wanted something from me, she would use Rusty as a negotiation tool, basically saying, if you don't give me this or if you don't do this, then you're not going to see Rusty. And that just made me so angry. It hurt my heart. And again, just so frustrated with my sister Darla. And then I have, in 1977, May the 16th, on our birthday, we all go out to dinner to celebrate our birthday. We were at her condo. It was a townhome, a 2-story townhome, where there was a half a bathroom downstairs and a full bathroom upstairs. We were there, we came back from dinner, came into her townhome, and I had to go to the restroom. And it wasn't number 1, it was number 2. And I did not want to go downstairs because it's not private, and there are people, we were all downstairs. I wanted to go upstairs to more of a private restroom, and she did not want me to go up there. She refused. She argued with me. She was just so aggressive, and likewise I was aggressive back. I wanted to go up there. I remember storming off and saying basically probably not some nice words, and said, "Forget this, I'm leaving." So I left. And then in 1977, 1 month later, in June, the end of June, Darla goes into the hospital. And she was having these excruciating headaches. At first, we just thought she was crying wolf, because that's kind of what she did throughout her life. But this time she was not. And I remember going to the hospital, and she was originally in the psychiatric ward because they thought she was having some psychiatric issue, because she was a wild girl. She was now married for her second time and divorce, and just living a very, very fast life. However, in the psychiatric ward, she had a cardiac arrest. So they moved her over into the medical ward. Obviously, it wasn't a mental issue, it was a medical issue. And I can remember going to the hospital. She was on life support, and I just couldn't believe it. It was very, very heartbreaking. And then a week later, she did die. They removed the life support. And I can remember being so, of course, heartbroken. At the funeral, it was very interesting because so many people came up to me and said, "Oh, Diann, your sister Darla just loved you so much. Oh, she loved you so much." And I thought to myself, well, she never told me she loved me. And likewise, I never told her I loved her. So that was a sad time. She dies again in 1977. Now you can see there's a little break because my relationship with Darla, the emotional relationship, continues. In all of our relationships, there's 3 aspects to a relationship, and they talk about this in our purple book on page 116. And the 3 parts are the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual. Our physical part of a relationship ends when someone dies. We can't hug them, we can't kiss them, we can't tell them, we can't, we don't have that physical connection. And likewise, in a divorce, that too can change because we don't usually touch them or communicate to them or talk to them the same way when we were married to them. Now, the emotional part of that relationship continues on. And this is what we're talking about, those undelivered communications that we need to complete in order to have a change. It continues in our memories, those feelings that we had, and this isn't limited to relationships, it's also to our pets, and it's also to all of those feelings, happy, sad, glad, sour, and sweet, all those emotions. It's to discover also what we wish would have been different, better, or more. The third aspect of our relationship is spiritual. And that never changes. It continues to go on. It's neither physical or emotional. It's that intangible something that makes us have a sense of that connection to others, again, including our pets. That our spiritual connection with our loved one never ends. Just like energy never changes. It just continues to evolve in a different form. And so with my sister, Another thing I want to talk about that too is what you're going to find out is, let's say I did one with my dad, and let's say my dad died in 1988, and my relationship with my father, let's say, was there was no emotion there. If I started to talk about feelings or emotions or wanted to connect on that level, he would just shut down. I could not connect with them. So let's say then I went ahead and had children. And what might be on my graph is with my son or my daughter, I could see myself implementing that same relationship, being emotionally shut down, projecting that onto my child or even my spouse. So that would be something to be aware of that you would want to put on your graph to see what patterns are coming up so we can make those changes. But in my relationship chart, what happens here is after my sister died, the biological father comes back, knocks on my parents' door right after my sister died, and he says, I want my son back. My sister had a handwritten note, said if anything happens to me, she wanted my parents to take care and raise Rusty. He's now 5.5 years old. So what was the downward here is we all had to go to family court. And anytime you go to court, usually it isn't pretty. You're digging up the dredge, you're digging up all the negative about each other. Now, one of the things I did not put here that I'm thinking about that could be on the upward line is I remember on one of the recesses while we were in court, we were in the restroom. And the biological father, his name was Rudy, his mother, Anita Espinoza, we were in the bathroom, and I can remember just as I'm sitting here today, she was in one stall, I was in the other stall, and she said, you know, we're all here because we love Rusty. And it's true. We love Rusty. Well, the judge awarded Rusty to his father, and they moved up to Oregon. I got to share with you, Rudy, the father, never, ever withheld our relationship with Rusty. We could see him anytime, night or day, and Rudy could very well basically said, you know what, F off you guys. You drug me through the dredge. I'm not putting up with this. But he never, ever did anything like that whatsoever. In fact, as we went on, and I could have put this on my graph as an upward one, is we all spent many vacations all together. So I'm so grateful for Rudy. My relationship with Darla continued through my relationship with Rusty, and that's what this shows up here. However, there was a situation that after Rusty got married, which I married him, and he was his second child, and it was a little girl. The first one he had was a boy with his beloved wife Tamara, but the second one was a girl, and they decide to name her Darla, the name of my twin sister. So I have a downward and an upward line because it was kind of prickly. I didn't know how that was going to feel to have this other little girl be named Darla after my sister and after Rusty's mother. And yet a part of me feels like, oh, we're going to keep her memory alive. I can remember my father, who was alive at the time, did not feel he didn't really embrace that too well. And so once again, my relationship continues on through Darla, through Rusty, and through Darla up until right now. So that's your relationship chart that you were going to be doing. Now, to help you choose that you may want to work on, like I said, it might not even be on your graph. I had a student in my class who did not have a good relationship with her niece. It was her one and only niece. It was not on her lost history graph, but she decided to do her relationship graph on her. And that's perfectly just fine, because what she discovered is she had unresolved communication with her. Some other clues that you might want to think about, and again, this is on page 112 in our book. Maybe it's a person that that you're unwilling to communicate about or think about. You didn't want to talk or say their name. That might be somebody to work on. Or it could be maybe all you have are positive memories. You couldn't even think of any negative memories. Or the flip side, somebody that's all negative. You don't have one good memory of that person. That might be another one to show us there's unresolved grief working there. Any fears or thoughts that you have about that relationship, again, that might be a clue for you to work on that relationship. Let me see. And remember, we don't have to get the dates exactly, but we need to have accuracy of our feelings. It's not about what a story was told to you and handed down. It's about your direct relationship and feelings and experience that you had with that person that you're working on. So I hope that helps you. If you have any questions, reach out to me. I'm always here for you. I love you, and I'm so proud of the courage that each of you are putting into doing your relationship graph.